Hey y'all, welcome to Underground. I'm Stephen Wilson.
And I'm Lauren Ravzak.
And we're going to teach you how to quilt in your embroidery machine. At Anita Goodesign, we've been creating embroidery collections for almost 20 years. Quilting collections for probably at least 10 years. And over time, I developed a couple really easy techniques that look really hard. That's the fun part for me, is when people look at something I did and go, that looks really hard, when it was actually really easy. But a lot of embroiderers are confused and distressed about all these steps it takes to make a quilt. And it's actually 3 steps. So everything we show you today, you're going to be able to make on your embroidery machine in a few easy steps. And all of our products are on sale that are on the website today as well.
They are. So our quilting collections are going to be 30% off for a limited time. So make sure you do your shopping. Don't wait because you know you'll forget. And then there's going to be some free shipping on some stabilizers as well and some scissors so you can get your notions that go with it.
So welcome to Underground. Welcome to our class. You're going to love quilting in your embroidery hoop. So how do you start quilting in the hoop? Well, this is like an interesting process. And this is a story I used to tell whenever I did an event. So I would get up there, and I'm going to tell you about how I started in embroidery. Now, this is like 30 years ago. So I walked into, at that point, it was a trade show. With a lot of you, it might have been your local shop, or you saw a demo online. But I saw like this embroidery machine stitching something. And I'd never seen one like in person before. So I walked up to it, and I was immediately like mesmerized, just like y'all are. Nobody just like plans on doing this years in advance. We usually all have that same experience, is we walk in to a store or somewhere, we see it running at the mall, and we're like, I want to do that.
Yes.
And that's how we kind of all start. So, I learned how to do embroidery back then when there's no internet, no help, and basically trial and error. And, y'all don't realize how lucky you are now to be able to take a class like this, or any class online, to show you all these secrets. So I learned to embroider. Obviously, the first thing I did was like clothing and things like that. And I wasn't introduced to quilting until, much later in my embroidery career. So I was maybe 30. And I noticed a huge difference between an embroiderer and a quilter. Now, you might say, oh, we're the same. A lot of us do both. And I think they're totally different. I'm going to explain what I mean. So quilters are really organized, neat, and meticulous.
We try to be, right?
So if you're going to do something like this is like one of our quilts that you're going to learn all the secrets on how to make. And it combines all these different techniques like, red work and free motion with regular embroidery, applique, folded fabric borders, things like that. So when you're going to create a quilt, you have to start with an idea of what you're going to create. Then you have to pick your fabric. So that's like you go to the fabric store and you sort through the fabric, and I've seen people like smell the fabric. Like, is this something I want? Truly. And then you lay that all out, and then you take out your tools. And quilters have like more tools than a fisherman.
Yes.
It's like this ruler, that ruler, these things, all these little, accessories and different rotary cutters and scissors. And it's like a tackle box full of tools to do something. And then you start by like cutting your fabric and stacking it and doing all this stuff. And it's like, before we ever stitch one thing, we've already completed all these steps. So that's why I've always said quilters are very meticulous. And
yes, it is. Organized. It's a lot of cutting and measuring.
Okay. Embroiderers are the opposite. It's the complete opposite. When you get your embroidery machine and figure out how to get things running, you just walk around your house and find anything you can to stitch on. You're like, oh, here's a towel in the hamper. Yeah. I'm going to put like an initial on that. Oh, my husband left his baseball hat sitting around. I want to put something on that. And that's probably how your first 2 years of embroidery is done.
Oh, yes.
It's just randomly stitching on anything that anybody leaves laying around. And, of course, every Christmas gift for now till eternity is something embroidered.
Everybody gets an embroidered gift. Absolutely.
Right. So there are two different camps. I mean, like people that create an embroidered quilt approach it very organized. And a lot of embroiderers go, oh, that's too much work. Because embroidered quilts in the past were done completely differently than the way we do them now. So all those things that embroiderers generally don't like, which is measuring, being accurate.
Yes.
Like when I made my first quilt, I was like, oh, when they say like cut the fabric to 1 inch, they really mean like 1 inch.
1 inch.
It's not like sort of 1 inch.
No, it's baking. It's got to be precise.
Yes. So I was never precise. So I've said before I came up with this system, there's got to be an easier way. Like there's got to be an easier way where I can keep the fun part of what I like to do, which is choose colors, do the embroidery, and not the part I didn't like to do, which was measure and be accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ironically. And this is what I do for a living. So to me, that was never the fun part. And we're going to show you how to combine all those things to create these quilts, honestly, with very little measuring, very little. I mean, you still have to pick your fabric, but to me, that's
the fun part. Yes.
But you're not going to get hung up on all these little details because there's so many techniques in this. It's almost like a sampler. But every technique we're going to show you in today's class is based on certain fundamentals. So we do these same exact steps every single time, and then you just combine that with a few other techniques, and you can do all these different things. I mean, if we're going to look at this one again, this is Winter Wonderland, and it's available, right now. You can download it from the site.
30% off. It's on sale, too.
Even better. But we have techniques like free motion. So normally you would do this by like moving your fabric by hand under a sewing machine. Really hard to do. We have, again, this is a printed fabric with embroidery on it. So you combining that technique. You got a folded fabric border with stippling. Everybody loves stippling.
Oh, yes.
All our stippling is done with your embroidery machine. This one is multiple blocks in one square. And you notice how everything lines up perfectly. We're not measuring blocks like in a traditional quilting sense, and it's still soft.
Yes. Oh, the hand of the quilt is gorgeous.
Right.
Which is something that we love here at Anita Goodesign, is just how these feel when they're all complete.
Right. That's the idea. So this is really close to what a traditional embroidered quilt would be. It could be just free motion or red work. It could be just folded fabric borders. So we're going to show you dozens of examples. Again, all available today at 30% off with all these different techniques and how to do them, because it really comes down to one technique.
Yep, it's just the fundamentals.
Yes, so let's start with explaining the basic process. All right, so the first thing we do is start with your hoop and your size. So every one of our embroidered quilt collections comes in multiple sizes. Could be a block that's 5x5, 6x6, 7x7, 8x8, and some in even larger sizes. So what does that mean? Well, you have to choose the size before you start. A, B, C, D, whatever your machine is capable of stitching. So once we do that, it's easy. Then we start with our hoop. So everything obviously is made in your hoop. That's the whole idea of this class. So we use like a no-show mesh stabilizer, and all the other things we use to make these is also available on the site. Yes. So we hoop the stabilizer. It's very soft. We try to avoid like a crunchy, tear away stabilizer, because a lot of that stabilizer stays trapped, in the design, and you want that to have a soft hand. So we use a soft stabilizer. So we hoop that stabilizer nice and tight, and we'll stitch step one of the design. Okay. What is that? Really complicated. It's just a square. Okay. That's our placement stitch for our batting. Okay. So the next square, what are we doing here?
So this is our batting. And what we show you is, like Steve mentioned, that squaring stitch, that first step is where all of the design work will happen. And then we add our batting direct in the hoop. So you don't have to add the batting at the very end. You don't have to fumble with it when you have this huge quilt finished. We attach it directly in the hoop, and it tacks down in place. And then when you're all done with that, you trim down your batting, which guarantees you did not have any of that batting in your seam allowance at the very end when it's time to put your quilt blocks together.
That makes it easier to stitch together when you're going to assemble your quilt. And what the batting does, for some of you, this may be your first embroidered quilt, is when you see, I mean, the whole premise of quilting is like sandwiching two pieces of fabric with batting in the middle. And then when you add those, running stitches or stippling or geometrics, it puffs the top fabric to create that quilted texture. Mm-hmm. So that's why the batting is essential. We use like an organic, batting. It's not the high loft batting. It's just like a real thin style of batting. You can use whatever style you want.
Yep.
I would never say you have to buy something specific for this project, but we use generally like a medium to low loft batting. All right, so that's, after we trim that, we go on to our third step.
And this is where we attach our base fabric. So as Steve has mentioned, we're always adding our fabrics, picking your colors, and that's always quilter's choice there. And you just place your base fabric down, and again, it will tack that down in place for you. So this really gives you an idea of where all of your embroidery will go. If you're adding folded fabrics, if you're having applique, everything starts in this quadrant right
Exactly
here.
right, like that. So, but if you're doing a quilt, so say I want to make a quilt with nothing. Maybe it's just like a decorative fabric that you just want to make a quilt with. This could be done. Like at that point, like you're squared off, your batting is under there, and then you could turn that into a quilt as well. Now, we're showing you a square here, but sometimes those are in different shapes as well. So this is a good example of a quilt that we did, and you can see that this one is created. Again, this is available on the site today. Is we have a square here, then we have a rectangle here. There's a larger rectangle here. So it's all these different shapes that form a quilt. It's the exact technique we just showed. So that original shape could be in a rectangle, could be in a square, it could be in a honeycomb shape.
Yeah.
Whatever we design, and then it's as simple as stitching the next couple of steps. But you don't have to measure this. When you trim them, you're going to trim them all the same. And that fabric that you're using to place here doesn't have to be perfect. It could be like scraps and leftover pieces of large fabric, because you're going to determine that size once it's embroidered.
Right. So this again just shows you that we have taken out the measuring and all that guesswork that you used to have to do in traditional quilting. So quilting in the hoop really has been made very simple. Yes. And it's great if you are a beginner, and it is great if you've been doing this for a really long time and just looking for something different. And this is our journaling quilt. So as you can see, it doesn't really matter which quilting collection you pick from us.
All the same.
Yep, you have a lot of choices below, but what you can do is all of the beginning steps start exactly the same way. So once you get those fundamentals down, sky's the limit with the kind of quilts that you can make.
Here's where the red flags used to be when you'd create your own embroidered quilt. So maybe I came up with this pattern and determined all these sizes for these different things. All right, well, I would embroider the design, and then I'd have to trim perfectly around each of these rectangles. Now, this is white space and this is white space. So how do I measure exactly? So you're getting chalk lines and fabric pens, and you don't have to do that. So the size is determined, and you can make this journaling quilt bigger. You can make it smaller. It could be a placemat. Either way, you're not worried about all that math and figuring this grid out.
Right. We just get to do the fun part of it, which is construct your blocks, make them, and put them together.
And technically, this design is basically one color or a few colors. The rest is all kind of done with fabric pens. So this could be done as a tone-on-tone design, or it could be as colorful as you want it to be. I would say it's a great project to do with kids, but it really isn't, because kids are pretty messy, and it still takes a long time to stitch. I tried to make one of these with my daughter, who's 6, and it really didn't look like this. So, well, maybe older kids.
Yes, hopefully, right?
Yeah, yes. It takes a little time. So this is like a basic block. Another quilt we have that shows that technique. Here's that. I was telling you about other shapes.
Ooh,
so,
this is a beautiful one. Yes. This is our honeycomb quilt, again, available below for 30% off.
Table runner. Looks beautiful. This quilt, this block here, you can see is a honeycomb. And again, no border, just red work and some basic colors in there. Again, this one is the same way. This one is the same way. This is now different. So, well, how do you do something that has this fabric, border? Which brings us to our next technique. This is where it gets complicated. The normal way. It's not complicated our way, but it used to be really hard, because it'd be okay, what's the measurement now for this little square? So I got to cut this one, hexagon. So I have to cut this, measure the whole edge, and then figure out this border, stitch this all together. It is, without a doubt, a total nightmare.
Yes, it can be, for sure.
Especially this.
Yes, with all the folded fabric.
Right.
Yes.
So we use the same method with an addition. So again, this style we showed you, the quilting basically 1, 2, 3 in those 3 steps is the foundation for every single quilt you'll ever see from us. And then what we do is we add a few different techniques,
Mm-hmm.
and that allows you to really expand on your knowledge.
All right, so should we show them how we do our folded fabric borders?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at that.
All right, so we figured out the basic premise, which is, you have your background, you have your fabric, you stitch on it, there's your quilt block. What makes quilts really interesting is the use of multiple fabrics. So to me, that's what I always loved about it. If I'm embroidering like this shirt, I have, it's just about the design. But when you do a quilt, it's about how all these elements tie in. Your background fabric, your border fabrics, your embroidery, and that's what makes a quilt a quilt. So this one I'm going to show you now. Again, we're going to learn this technique next. Upside down.
Whoopsies.
Looks good both ways. This is a really simple quilt. Again, free motion here, and then running stitch designs, just different autumn designs, scarecrows, apples, and things like that. The color theme is really simple, and the borders we used is actually burlap. So to me, that's like, oh, this is what gives this quilt its pizzazz, is that like unexpected fabric.
Right.
So we're not embroidering on the border, so we could really use any fabric we want. And without the border on these alternate, checkerboard blocks, I think this would be a bit of a boring.
It would. Oh, yeah. It definitely makes it stand out. Gives it some visual texture to it. And definitely gives you that autumn feel, too, because this is our handmade autumn quilt. So all the designs within each block is autumn themed, and then you add that burlap border, and it definitely just takes it to the next level.
Every leaf, every block is the same. So this is not like that deep to make this quilt.
Right.
These are all just filler blocks, stitched really quickly, inexpensive fabrics, and like 100% fun. So this, again, one simple technique you're going to learn next, folded fabric border. Let's look at another one that's similar to that. Little bit more complicated level of embroidery, but actually a very simple quilt. So you can see there's 12 different birds here. Again, they start off with the same technique, batting, trim your batting, then you stitch your embroidery here. So you have a cardinal, you have a rooster.
They are the birds from our 50 state
50
set.
states.
So there are actually 50 blocks and 50 birds and flowers that go with each state. So this is also on the website right now for 30% off.
Now, what makes it a folded fabric border? It might be tough to tell there because of the contrast in the color, but each block has a 1-inch black border. So when you put these all together, everyone is perfectly framed. Again, no measuring. Is that what's unique about this, and this is what always gets me excited, is that the same exact technique that we just showed you. So when we saw the autumn quilt, it's the same exact one as the birds.
Yep.
But it looks so different. And that shows you with embroidery style and fabric choice, you get a whole different look at the end. So it could look elegant, it could look whimsical, it could look rustic, just by changing the fabric, which is the beauty of an embroidery.
Oh,
quilt.
yes. That's the fun part.
So how do we do this border?
Okay, let's show them.
This is pretty fun. So we're going to take that first step. Again, the first step was you hoop your stabilizer, you stitch the first stitch, you add your batting, the next stitch tacks it down, we trim the batting, and we add our fabric, and that tacks it down.
Yep.
So that's what we did before. So now that's where you would start here. So if I show you this hooping, you're going to see that our batting's under there, our fabric is tacked in place, and we trimmed our fabric around the tacking stitch. So now this tacking stitch for the fabric is inset from the outer edge. So you can kind of see this spot, it's the same color, but this is only batting around here. So now we follow the instructions in the tutorial. Now every one of our designs comes with these instructions in full color, step by step. It's kind of one of the pillars of our company.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that we don't just send something out to you and hopefully you know what to do with it. So anything you learn here in this video is also shown in full color pictures with tips and little arrows, and it's painstaking detail.
Yes, it walks you right through the whole project.
So what it's going to do next is stitch your placement stitch for your first piece of folded fabric. So you'll see it right here. This is a rectangle stitched towards the edge. It'll go right to the edge and inset a little bit for overlap. Then we'll take our first piece of fabric. Again, this is cut to the size we recommend. It could be a little bigger. It's okay. We could trim it later. And we lay that fabric face down, just like that, over the line. Okay, pretty simple. As simple as that.
Step 1 for your folded fabric. We're on our way there.
You just place it. Step 2 is you're going to press start on your machine. And what your machine's going to do then is stitch a line right here. It's inset about 1/4 inch from where you placed it. If you placed your fabric too far over, it's going to be a 1/2 inch. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be covered. It's not as exacting as we're making it look. Really easy. Tax it in place. Then you're going to take, while this is on the machine, you're going to fold the fabric over, and we use a little piece of tape to hold it in place. So there's your first border, like laid down. We hit start in the machine again, and that tacks that in place. So now your border is already tacked in place. We're ready to do the next side. So to recap, you stitches the placement stitch, you lay your fabric down, stitches the tacking stitch, you fold your fabric over, and then it tacks that in place. So 3 steps for each folded fabric border.
Yep. And I always say it's kind of like the waltz. Once you learn those first 3 steps, you just keep repeating it, and then you know your dance. So again, just like our hooping with our starting your blocks, it's always the same 3 steps.
It's like 1, 2, 3,
yep.
1, 2, 3.
There you go.
1, 2,
and that's
3.
how our folded fabrics go. A little slower, yes.
But like that's what's really cool when you're doing a complicated shape. It's just those same 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
3 steps for each layer of folded fabric. Some blocks will be just folded fabric.
Right? Oh,
and
yes.
It sounds like, oh, this sounds complicated because you open, the one thing embroiderers also don't like is lots of steps. So you're going to open some of these designs in your machine and you're going to see 60 steps.
Right.
And that's like, oh, wow. I don't even have to like follow the tutorials anymore.
Right.
Because I know it's 1, 2, 3. I put the next fabric, 1, 2, 3. And they're all numbered. Like this is fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3, fabric 4. So it's not like you have to guess where it's going to go. And the placement stitch shows you where it's going to go.
Yes, it's a guide.
So waltz is perfect.
Yes.
So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Our next 1, 2, 3 is our next piece of fabric. And you can see that down here at the bottom. So if you were going to do like, light blues for the top and bottom and maybe darker blues for the sides, then when you do your next block, you just follow that.
Yep.
It's so simple. And again, you'll be surprised at how complicated you can make something look. Here's the next one. So now you can see all 4 sides of the folded fabric quilt block are done. Now, when we're done with this block, we would trim our 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch seam allowance. We generally use a 1/2 inch, and the block is finished. So you have a perfect border with a perfectly centered design that's done completely in your hoop. This is so easy. Now, the other thing that's really important when you create your embroidered quilt, and we talk about this in all of our tutorials, is how do I choose colors for this?
Right. Oh,
These colors are perfect. So I choose the colors, and everybody that works here chooses the colors the same way. We take our fabric that we're going to use. The first thing we do is pick our fabric. I've met so many embroiderers over the years that spend all their time like worried about what's written in the tutorial. Like, I don't have the thread color for burnt orange from blah, blah, blah. Insert your thread company. Can I use burnt orange from Madeira or Floriani or somebody else instead? And the answer is you can use whatever thread you want. Whatever thread you have at home, there's just one system that's important. And if we hold that raccoon up again, this is the design. But if you choose the colors for your design that I chose, but you don't use my fabric, it might not look good. So the first thing we always do is we don't choose our design colors first. We choose our fabric colors first. Mm-hmm. So if we know we're going to use these aqua colored fabrics as our border, then we would choose those colors for the leaves and other ones. So maybe you're using a fat quarter bundle and you're picking 10 or 12 colors based on that. It doesn't matter what's in the design, just match those colors. So people will go, well, this has leaves in it and leaves aren't blue. And it's like, well, in this quilt, they're blue because they look perfect. If I tried to keep the accurate colors here of like real life, well, then I don't know if that would look good.
Right.
Unless I use fabric that matched those colors.
And then it wouldn't, your quilt at the end wouldn't look cohesive either.
Correct.
So it would look off if you didn't have those colors running throughout.
Maybe that'll be our next class. It's how to pick successful design colors. Depends how many of y'all like this one and send us positive reviews. I like the positive reviews the best, so be sure to forward me those. Negative reviews, send those to Lauren. That's fine. So let's look. So this shows you, this is one of our animal quilts. This is from
Animal Adventure.
Animal Adventure. Mm-hmm. I love this collection because This one, when I designed this with Carol, our creative director, quite a few years ago, it was like, how do you break free of the quilt block? And you're probably thinking now, taking this class, well, we just learned how to make the block. Like, why do we have to break free of it already? But this wasn't the first quilt I designed. So to me, it's like everything's centered, and some of these designs are. But I wanted the designs to almost look like they were crawling out of the quilt, which is so cool when you see it. So again, same technique as we're showing here. I love this collection.
This is one of my favorites too.
So what's cool is, again, you see the base fabric, you see the folded fabric we did, and these animals look like they're crawling in between and in and out of these blocks. You see the owls going between these two, and the lions jumping in between, the penguin and the bear. So they have like a few more steps. So maybe for this one, you're not doing all 4 folded fabric borders at the same time. You probably do this one, it does the fox, then you do the other 3. That's how we do that. But again, these are all step-by-step in the tutorial. Every folded fabric border in every single quilt collection that we create is done the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. And then what's nice too with this animal adventure collection is you're not receiving just one design or one animal. Everything that you see here in this quilt, plus tons more, there's a lot of designs that come in that collection, are going to be available on the site. Now, all of these quilts that you are seeing today that we're talking about are available for 30% off, but it is a limited time, so make sure you get your purchases in while they are discounted.
I remember designing this one. It was like, all right, so for each animal, it had like all these different variations of a quilt. So you can make a whole quilt, just a penguin, if you want.
This pop through.
And you have this pop through design, and then up here, let's fold that back down, you'll see each animal has its own like red work, free motion block, and then you have these shadows, and they all go together, and it's like really fun to do this.
Oh my gosh. So what's great,
as a big project.
Yeah, and what you can do too is, because each animal has all of these designs, if you're decorating for a baby room, if you're trying to give a themed baby shower gift, you can pick just one animal and make an entire bedroom set off of that, or nursery set, or you can do what we did in this big quilt and combine all of the animals together. So that's what's really nice with our collections, is not only are you getting sizing options, so depending on what your machine and your hoop size is, you get all of the different sizes, but you will also get all of these different designs, so you can really pick and choose.
And different project ideas.
Yes.
So I've had clients and customers make this, and I love when y'all share photos on Facebook and Instagram and email us. And this one was created like into a soft book. So each animal you kind of flip through with the definitions. A lot of these we've had customers frame. So maybe they're only going to stitch out like this frame block, and you could do the bigger size and go to Michael's and just frame them.
Yes.
So you could be a quilter and create embroidered quilts and not actually sew them together. They frame really well because it has that beautiful fabric border, and then you want to give somebody a gift for a new baby. Like I remember when I had my first Wren, I got a lot of gifts from customers with like pillows and quilts and frame things. It was really fun. When I had my next one in, I didn't get anything.
No. No sprinkle party.
No sprinkles. My son, poor little guy, has nothing.
Nothing.
No
the hand-me-downs. The hand-me-downs, yes.
But it's perfect frame. So it's the same thing. You're creating a quilt block, you're adding a border to it, and then you could really combine that into a multitude of different projects. And that's what's cool about a lot of these quilts. This one, the next one I'm going to show you is also very similar. This one, again, back to our original technique.
This is the Resilient Thistle Collection.
I'm going to leave that up to Lauren to say. But again, free motion, embroidered. This is more of like a rustic hand stitch look. This is all stippled and simple. This one has no borders, so easy. Now, can you combine blocks with borders here? That's what I love about this, is like if you have 3 quilting collections, you could combine all 3 quilting collections into one project, because everything in my quilting series and anything Anita does follows that same thing. When I designed this embroidered quilt system, my original idea was I don't want to get a customer stuck with this one collection does one thing and only goes with itself. My whole concept was to come up with these sizes, A, B, C, D, double A. There's bigger sizes now for even bigger machines, and that if you pull a design from the Thistle Collection and you want to combine this with a penguin and an apple, you can. I don't know if I would pick those three, but you could pick just decorative folded fabric blocks and mix those in with this collection and create something new, and they're exactly the same size. So backwards compatible, forwards compatible. It's you never have that issue. So you can take that animal scene we just looked at and combine them, and here's like Christmas animals, and the snowman goes in between too. So can you add the bear or other ones and maybe stitch that in Christmas colors? Yes,
absolutely.
It's the exact same system.
Right, and this is our Christmas Peekaboo quilt collection. So this also has that peekaboo effect, so it would match really well with that animal adventure collection, like you said, and you just use your Christmas colors, you'll be all set. Right,
so you have the fox here, and then you can have the lion jumping through, and if you use the Christmas colored fabric, well, it's a Christmas lion.
Absolutely.
And you can make a giant project. And the point is you're not stuck with that one collection.
Right.
Is you use learn our quilting system, and anything we create now, the past, and the future follows those guidelines. Like that's kind of like my rules as a designer is that I don't want to be limited for you to design like your dream quilt.
Right.
So again, let's recap those steps. Okay. We could just look at quilts all day. Again, the first step is to hoop your stabilizer, lay your batting down, tax the batting, and you trim your top fabric. Okay, so we got that. Then it stitches the first rectangle. Remember, 1, 2, 3. So with your placement stitch, we lay our fabric down like that. Step number 2, tax it down. We tape it and fold it up, nice and tight. Step number 3 is it tacks it down again. So 1, 2, 3. And you wind up with a perfect border every single time. So now what technique are we going to learn next? I know we have a bunch. And again, we're building the foundation now. And then we're just adding some new ingredients to this system.
I think we should show them what free motion is all about, because free motion, I know, is a typical traditional quilting technique, but it takes a lot of work to get that traditionally lined up.
I think it's one of the hardest things to do.
Yes, and I think we should show them our in the hoop way of how our free motion works.
Okay, perfect. So free motion. Again, this applies to what we already learned. It's just a different technique. And why I wanted to touch on this is because it's one of the simplest things to embroider, one of the hardest things to do as an embroiderer that tried to do it the other way.
Yes.
So before, you would have like a sewing machine, not an embroidery machine. Like this is the sewing part. Now, a lot of embroiderers really don't sew that much. So when I first saw someone do free motion, they're basically taking like fabric, putting batting underneath it, and then they take it and they like move it underneath the needle like this. And they form their stippling and their patterns and all that. And sometimes they have quilts that have like the big things on it.
Yes, they drive them.
And there's other tools and stuff to use, but traditionally that's how free motion quilting was done. Now we do it in our
way.
So again, we put the batting down, we put our fabric down, you follow the step-by-step instructions, and then this is quilted, and it has a definite texture to it. And then when you add maybe a higher batting, or you could use a stretch fabric, it puffs up even more. So you can really experiment with different fabrics for this. And then when you stitch them together, you wind up with kind of like a wallpaper, like an endless design. So you can make this a king-size bedspread if you want.
Right.
And it's only probably 4,000 or 5,000 stitches in each block. Really easy to do. You can go really big with those projects. So there's whole quilts that you could do with just free motion. Here's a larger one.
Oh, this is from our Quilted Traditions collection. This is beautiful.
Quilted Traditions. Easy. There's no block in here that has more than like 10,000 stitches. So when you see the leaves or the palm leaves here, the patterns, it's all chosen in advance. Mm-hmm. So you fussy cut them just like you would with a regular quilt, and you lay the patterns down where you want, and then it just does that free motion stitch right on top of it. It's pretty cool. And then you're done. You can do them tonal, like you see here. You barely see the thread, but when you get up close, you see it. Or you could do it contrasting, like you see here. And again, this is like a traditional quilt when it's done with no measuring, no nothing. So free motion, you could truly do whole projects and each block doesn't. When you do a regular embroidery block, it has a decent amount of stitching in it.
Right.
If you have like a bird or like some of the things we've showed you already, we're going to show you some more that use a lot of stitching. So this is a technique again. 1, 2, 3 blocks. Now, red work or free motion work or running stitch work are always the lightest stitching. And there's plenty of those available on the site today. But what happens when you want to do like a deluxe amount of stitching? And that is like a tile seam.
Right.
Same exact technique as this, except we're using the images to form like a larger picture. So what goes up is the stitch count. Obviously, it becomes a lot higher. But here's one. It's called Butterfly Dreams. Now, the fabric used in this is just plain white silk. And then it's quilted. You could see the stippling. Then all this detail of the butterflies and the flowers in the background is embroidered. So it has considerably more stitching than a running stitch quilt block.
Right.
But the same exact technique. You're not learning how to do something different here. Each block tells you which colors to use. You choose all your colors in advance. And then when it calls for your pink, your red, you just do it block by block. And this one is 5 across, 5 down. So 25 block quilt. And again, you could choose different sizes. But this is what I like to call it's a tile scene. It's a tapestry. You're truly stitching an heirloom piece of art that you can hang on your wall as like an art quilt.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And what you may not know is when you're looking at this, the detail and the realistic kind of point of view of this is we have artists that draw for us here at Anita Goodesign, and they draw every single design for us, which is why it has such a lifelike look and why it is so detailed. So we don't use pre-made designs, clip art, anything like that. We have a whole team that draws
everything's made.
Everything, and it's all made in-house,
in
which
Charlotte,
is
North
amazing.
Carolina. So
yes.
now we have, to show you what a tile seam can do, we're going to show you what it's probably almost everybody's favorite.
This is the wow factor right here.
But you might say that this one is really hard to do. Like when you see this, if we zoom in on it, you'll see what I mean. You're like, this is the Last Supper. This must be so complicated. Okay, it's not. It's the same exact technique as free motion. You just put your batting down, you put your fabric down, you trim it, and this one has some appliques in it. So a lot of these larger areas are applique, and then you have these really soft stitches that go in there, and you just follow the colors. This one does have more colors than the Animal Adventure quilt.
Right.
But
it's not an advanced technique.
No, it's not an advanced technique.
It's not. It's everything. It's the basics that you have learned.
I mean, it's really soft.
Yeah. It is just a matter of what I like to call a commitment piece. So you have to be committed to sitting down and stitching this one out. That would be the hardest part about it, is finding the time. And that's on you. That's not on us.
It's not like a one-day quilt.
No, it is not.
But
it's just picking colors.
It's a framed piece of art. Or, somebody's gift. And, I always said that, like when you get your embroidery machine, you start making quilts and projects that you have your list of gifts, and I always follow like my grandmother's instructions. She grew up like it's an Italian house in New York.
Oh yes.
And she would have our list, and it would be like people would be like ranked for gifts. So you'd have like your A-listers, your B and your C, and like if somebody gave my grandmother something one year, it'd be like whatever, just a loaf of bread or a fruitcake. It's like you're down to like a D level gift. Oh, so if you're making this, you're only going to make this gift for your like A level people.
A plus.
If they're like B level, maybe they're going to get a placemat. So eventually, after maybe 7-8 years, you have a full set.
There you go.
So this is the same technique. Again, it uses applique, quilted, done. We added a little outside border, for a little bit more emphasis on this one.
And what really neat about this one, too, is that I love this kind of system that we've created here. So what you do, this kind of creates a spiral or 360-degree effect here. So you make one block 4 times, you quarter turn it, and it makes this beautiful pattern for you.
So there's always tricks. So this is a gift to make, again, that you can make for someone on your list that's easier. And then, at the bottom, maybe they just get a pot holder, which is really cool. To do, because you can take any of these blocks, and we have plenty of tutorials on that, and a single block you just add a little handle, and we use a different fabric for the back, and it could be a pot holder.
There you go.
So
Nemo.
Also amazing. And this is our under the sea, and it's all different little scenes. Again, it plays with stitching in the background. It plays with the free motion technique with realistic animals. So the technique is unlimited for quilting in your hoop.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people see the complexity of some of these designs and go, "Oh, that's so hard. Like I'll never be able to do it." And I mean, to me, it's one of the easiest things to do. And there's so many. This again plays off that all quilt blocks aren't square. So again, squares, rectangles, small squares, other rectangles, and this beautiful stitched border that you could choose to add the border to some of these or not, or I could take this border and add it to any other quilt, just like I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely modular. A lot of people don't think that way. They think this border is for this, and I can only use it with this.
Right.
But I could add this to anything.
And this sashing is included. This is our farmstead quilt. So what's wonderful about that, as Steve mentioned, is that you can take certain blocks and combine them with the other quilting collections that are on sale right now. You can take this sashing that's included in this collection, change your fabrics up, change your colors up, and you can add this to a collection that maybe didn't come with sashing, but you wanted to add it to.
Right.
So as long as you take the same size, like our A size block, A size sashing, they'll all fit together.
All fit together. And this collection, again, once you learn the basics of quilting in your hoop, which we've just showed you, really 2 steps. We haven't showed you anything here that goes beyond those 2 things.
Right.
You fold your border, 1, 2, 3. This one is done with appliques. Again, the individual tutorials will show you how to do that. And this one has a blanket stitch border. So I wanted to kind of design this one so it looks like it was done by hand, because I love like those hand details.
Yeah.
But who's got that kind of time to do this? All this handwork? I mean, some people do, most people don't. And you have to learn all those techniques. And to me, it's easy. You just trim the applique like you normally would. And then it does that blanket stitch border. Done.
Perfect.
And it blends amazingly with everything else. Again, there's nothing here that we haven't shown you yet. So you can make everything from a free motion animal quilt to the Last Supper using those 3 techniques. Just adding like time in for the length or size of the quilt. And that's basically how you create all these things. We actually created a system because this became so popular, this quilting style, that people would go, well, how do I use the designs I already have with this system? Because this is great. I mean, it works with our quilting designs. What if you bought a regular embroidered design? So you bought just random designs that we all buy. Again, we're embroiderers, and we go on like the site that you're on right now, and you're like, oh, there's a cheer dance design. I want it. There's an apple. I'm going to download that too. And I think that's how we accumulate our libraries.
Right.
But now you did this technique, and everything else is harder now. So how do we apply this technique to not only our quilting designs, but any embroidered design you already have? So we're going to show you that right now.
Okay.
All right. So it's amazing what you could do with 2 different techniques. Again, all we learned was a plain block and a block with borders. But how do you use designs you already have? Again, I had a huge library of designs. And then how do you take one and add it to another? And most design companies and websites, they want you to just buy into like one system. And I don't believe in that. I think that we always use lots of things together. So if you have designs you already own, this is what you do. We have 3 different collections available on the site today. We have Quilting 1, 2, 3. We have Autumn 1, 2, 3, and Christmas 1, 2, 3. They all follow that exact system of 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
So step 1 being choose your background. Okay. So the 1, 2, 3 design sets come with all these different background stitches. Then basically you choose your border as step number 2. So this one we did just a 4 panel border. You could do borders for, I don't know, all different styles.
All different styles. Double folded fabric borders. You can do.
Right. Solid stripes, all these different options. So we chose our background, we chose our border, and then we chose our design. So now the 3 collections that we have, the Quilting 1, 2, 3, Autumn 1, 2, 3, Christmas 1, 2, 3, come with a huge assortment of designs, but they're not built together. So you could choose all different backgrounds, different borders, and then you have like your embroidery design. I use this for effect. Generally wouldn't look like this. This would be obviously like a patch. So then you would merge your design in. That one's a little big. But so this would be the design. So basically in your software, you merge that design with your background and border, and you wind up with a finished quilt block, and then you make them into a quilt like you see here. So easy. Now, do you have to merge the designs that were included? You don't. You can have your own designs. You can have cheer dance designs. You can have baseball designs, softball designs, whatever you want. And you just merge them into our backgrounds with our borders. So you choose your background, choose your border style, merge your design in. All the 1, 2, 3 collections come with dozens upon dozens of designs.
Absolutely.
And intricate borders and simple borders. But what I love about them is maybe you have your own autumn designs that you love, pumpkins and leaves and whatever. You could use our borders with your designs.
Yes. So it really just gives us a lot of options. And this is why that 1, 2, 3 system that Steve has created is so popular. And as he mentioned, I'm going to grab this really quickly. Think about traditional quilting. So in traditional quilting, if you chose a background pattern and the design you were going to stitch is your Santa Claus, traditionally that background would go around the Santa Claus. So then you would have a negative space, almost like a puzzle piece where your Santa would go in. So you would be married to have to use that Santa. And with the 1, 2, 3 system, what Steve's come up with is that these are light stitching. So it goes over the entire block, which is what allows you to choose those designs that go in the center, and why you can choose things and designs, embroidered designs from anywhere in your library. Right. So you have lots of options. And we know as creative people, we like options.
We love options.
Right?
And so with quilting 1, 2, 3, it's basically like generic backgrounds and generic borders. So you could use those for baby designs, flower designs, anything like that. And you would say, well, if I have that, why would I need anything else? Like, why make more 1, 2, 3s? Well, autumn 1, 2, 3 includes, obviously, autumn designs with it. So you see the leaves and the grapes and the pumpkins and things like that. It has autumn, basically like red work, free motion designs. And then a lot of these little folded borders also include lots of embroidery. So it is really like a deluxe version of quilting 1, 2, 3, thematically being autumn. So you see, instead of just a folded fabric border, these are folded then embroidered. And this is, this one's about 12 layers of a border. This is amazing. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you're doing that 12 times. So that's 36 steps just for the border, and then it embroiders it. So it's a deluxe block, which is why we only did 2 of those here.
Right. But again, using our folded fabric technique, so no measuring.
No measuring.
Not really any thought process. You just have to
1, 2,
follow
3.
those steps, those folded fabric steps. So it's really, really simple. And what I always love to point out to people too, when you are looking, a lot of people, when they look at this sample of our autumn 1, 2, 3, they think all of this detail comes with the fabric we chose.
Right.
And this is actual embroidered detail that comes with this collection that goes on top of these borders. So it's incredible. It's so detailed. It is just very, very luxurious. Right. Again, it's a fantastic for a family heirloom or to gift to anybody that loves autumn as much as we do.
But what's amazing is this super detailed block is right next to the simplest block you'll ever run. So I think it's about how you mix these techniques together that truly make like an amazing quilt.
Absolutely.
And Christmas, very similar. You can see this one has a totally different look. Again, embroidered sashing, multiple layers of folded fabric, running stitches on top of it. Again, same size. So you could add these to the quilting 1, 2, 3 blocks and switch them together and take other Christmas designs and make it vibrant instead of classic Christmas colors. Same techniques. Everything we showed you is that same style. So it's so easy. Lots of people want to make things complicated. I don't. I think we're getting this far in embroidery is complicated enough. This should be about having fun, not about doing calculus and geometry and having 50 kinds of rulers. It's great that you have that stuff. You don't really need any of it to make these complex projects.
Just gorgeous.
Quilting 1, 2, 3. So that's our quilting system. Once you do it, you're going to love it and you're going to apply it to everything that you make. So it is so much fun to do. I want to thank you for joining us today on Anne the Grand. And remember, for a limited time, there's some kind of sale going on with this.
There is. So all of the quilts that we are showing you from Anita Goodesign are 30% off for a limited time. So just don't wait because you want to get your hands on these collections now. You don't want to wait for it. They are absolutely fantastic. I hope, you really learned something with Steve and I teaching you how we quilt in the hoop.
Right. And a reminder that the downloads have the tutorials attached, multiple sizes. We give you every tool you need to create this. And there's a lot of other products on sale for this new class as well.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you very much.
And don't forget to grab any of your stabilizers and your scissors, because And the Gram is offering free shipping too. So you can get your
Perfect.
quilting designs on sale and then get free shipping on some of your must-have notions.
Start making our projects now.
There you go.
Thank
Bye,
you all.
everybody.